What's up guys, DuArktik with another Marvel Strike Force video, and in this video we are going to talk about the BIFROST team. We're going to break down what you have to do in order to be successful with this team. So we're going to go through the T4s, the ISO 8, which characters you should invest the most in, and extremely important, which ISO 8 you are using, and also the position of the characters. The BIFROST team is going to be somewhat similar to the Rebirth team and to Invaders team, and even most importantly the Invaders team, because depending on the position of the characters you might have a very good experience with this team or a terrible experience with this team. There are different mechanics that we have on this team that you can take advantage of to benefit your performance in raids. And you might even skip some investment on this team if you are using, once again, the right position, the right ISO weight, and so on. So, as always, if you like the information on these videos, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe for more Marvel Strike Force content, and make sure to smash that like button like a boss. Okay, so this is a first impressions infographic because we still don't have the full team unlocked, and also because I don't have access to the test server. I'm not an envoy. And I need more time to theory craft these. It's still not the full infographic, but we'll have an update in the future on my Discord. Link is in the description. If you want to use this, check it out for yourself, and if you want to check out the updated version. Okay, so as always, we have the T4 recommendations. We have the game mode specific. Green means the T4s are good or must have for raids. If it's orange, it means all game modes, and then we have Cosmic Crucible and Alliance Wars. Now I put the order of the characters. This is something new that might not be noticed, is that I'm gonna put the order of the characters which you should invest the most in. So if a character is at the top, you should invest more. If a character is at the bottom, you should invest less. Then we have the ISO 8, we have the gear that they need, and then we have the gold promotion credits, or not, that you should invest them, because this is going to be important if you're trying to get some good red stars on this team or not. Position of the team, and as I mentioned, the part in terms of the game modes, I just need some more time. For example, for Blitz, we have to split this team in 3. We can split this team in 3. Based on that, we're going to have a different performance. Then we're also doing some testing with some of these characters in Arena. That's going to take some time. And Alliance Wars, Avengers Towers, and Cosmic Crucible, these characters, they have a lot of value, but we need to test them out. We need to separate the characters, we need to use them together, and that's going to take a long time to break down. So be patient, and once again, if you want to see the final version, in a couple of weeks it will be available on my Discord. Okay, something that we can talk about right now is the gold promotion credits and red stars on this team. The most important character, as we mentioned, it's Val, it's at the top. So that's the character you want to get your 6 red stars, 7 red stars. Then we have other characters that are not as important, but it can be somewhat nice to have at 6 red stars or 5 red stars, which are going to be Sylvie and Beta Ray Bill. The other characters that are not as important, you might pull a few Elite 4s just to get the most red stars on those characters. Those are going to be the Teen Loki and the OG Loki. So those characters, if you get 4 red stars, is fine. Sylvie and Beta Ray Bill 5 or 6 are fine, but if you get a 4, you can after upgrade, so don't worry too much about that. Whichever red stars you get first, you just stay with it because it's not that important. The only character that really matters is Val. One of the reasons why Val is so important is because she, they, them, it, by, I don't know what to say. I'm gonna just say she because it's a female name, even that in the mythology it's a male character, so whatever. So Val is going to revive characters, it's going to revive 4 characters, so it doesn't really matter what the other characters do, because at the end of the day they're going to be revived. Now, we're going to talk about the different mechanics that this team has that you can take advantage of. We talked about the position, we talked about the ISO 8, or we're going to talk about. But one of the situations that you want to talk about is which characters should you prioritize to revive. How you prioritize characters to revive? Well, you just expose them to more damage. The characters that are going to be more beneficial to you to be revived are Loki, Teen Loki, and Beta Ray Bill. So those are the characters that you want to get the most damage on. And depending on which character revives, you can get a bunch of evades, a bunch of death proofs, a bunch of deflects, a bunch of defense ups, a bunch of regenerations, a bunch of immunities. So you can see that the fact that whenever a character revives, you have some additional effects. That's going to be awesome. That means we don't have to invest as much on those characters, and at the same time, reviving is going to be a good thing because you can do it more often, you're going to get more buffs, and we are also not going to be afraid of using the Val ultimate, because that's what happens sometimes, is that we are just afraid of using Val. Speaking of Val, we have to talk about Val exposed mechanic, which is going to be extremely important. Even if you apply exposed to 10 characters, you can only get 1 energy per attack. I was testing this out all night, and yes, even if you have 10 exposed on the field, it only gives energy for 1 activation per character. So whenever we have a turn, you can only get 1 energy for that 1 attack. Isolate attacks also do not trigger the exposed mechanic, so don't bother with that. You can apply isolate, you can apply the expose with isolate, but you cannot activate the exposed with isolate. So keep this in mind because it's very, very important. Other thing that we can talk about the mechanics of this team is Loki. Whenever Loki spawns or revives, is going to give a bunch of turn meter and energy to Sylvie. So if you can make Loki to die all the time, that's going to be super convenient, as long of course as you can revive him. And the minion, I think the minions, they also activate the expose, but that's not super important. Yes, you want to have the minions of Loki as often as possible, but it's not going to be that much of a big deal. Okay, so with all these mechanics that we talked about, let's take a look at the position of this team. And if you don't have the position, this exact position, you are not going to perform as well because you are not benefiting of all the mechanics of this team. Before we even start talking about the position, there is one last mechanic that we have to talk about, which is from Teen Loki and the regeneration on the team. If you have a regeneration on any of the Bifrost characters, that specific character is going to get 100% counterattack chance and additional damage. So you want to make sure that every turn you have regenerations on your team. So you spawn with regeneration. After that, you have to make sure that you can trigger more regenerations on the team. One other thing that is going to be important is the speed of the characters. Depending on the speed, you can get more regenerations or less, so pay very attention to that. Okay, now that we're talking about all the mechanics, everything that is going on. So this is going to be the best position of this team. The position is somewhat similar to the Rebirth team. You want to focus all the attacks in the middle. While these characters do not have block chance and activations on block chance, as I just mentioned, every time they die, every time they counter attack, we have benefits for our team. So something that we can see with the Beta Ray Bill, whenever he counter attacks, he can flip defense up into defense down. Whenever Loki gets attacked, he can apply bleeds to the enemies, and on top of that, he can also apply defense down to the enemies. Then we have Teen Loki. Whenever he counterattacks, he can apply regeneration to the entire team. So you need to have regeneration on the entire team all the time. And this is how you're going to make it work. You're going to make sure that Teen Loki is always applying regenerations to the entire team. Now, Val can apply Exposed with the counter attack, which is great. But once again, because you can only benefit of one Exposed on the field, and because Val is the most fastest character on this team, we can apply more Exposes than we can use. So having Val doing counter attacks is not going to be that important. And because most of the time we're going to use Val as a striker, the abilities that don't apply Expose, it's fine because you're going to use the striker as a weight and then you're going to apply that Expose. So you can see that you don't need to have Val doing counterattacks all the time, that you can get additional benefits of the other characters doing counterattacks. The most important character is probably the Teen Loki because he activates all these mechanics. And in my opinion, Loki is pretty decent as well, once again, because he's applying the defense down and the bleeds. Okay, so Sylvie, she does turning wind. This is a big mistake. You cannot apply negative turning wind to the enemies with a counter attack, because the enemies, they are already attacking. If the enemies are already attacking, their speed bar is 0. And in Marvel Strike Force, you cannot give negative speed bar, because when it's 0 is 0. You can give extra speed bar, but you cannot give negative speed bar. And I'm talking about this because from the footage that we have from the envoys, there are so many envoys right now, it's crazy, and they're all not very smart. So you can see right here from Porkypad, we have Teen Loki next to the tank, great. But Val, it's nice, but it's not super important because she it, they, them, I don't know, he or she is applying the exposed, and you cannot benefit out of those exposeds. One or two exposed on the field is fine, and in my opinion, you get a lot more benefits of using Loki. Also, because Loki is going to be our skirmisher, and he's going to be able to apply vulnerabilities to many characters because of the counter isolate. Many people don't know, it seems, but if you have a character with 100% counter attack chance, like Bishop, like Red Hulk, like Loki if he has regeneration in this case, if you have those counter attacks, you can apply vulnerability to all kinds of enemies, and then you can benefit of those vulnerabilities with your other strike characters. You usually need to have more skirmishers than strikers, but when you have a skirmisher with 100% counter-attack chance, then you can have more strikers than skirmishers because of this specific mechanic. So you can see right here, even that he had the Kid Loki, Val once again is not necessary, Loki would be a better option. Then we have the Marvel Strike Force official page with Sylvie doing counters. Once again, it seems like the developers themselves don't know that you cannot apply negative turn bar, but okay, maybe she's there to apply the vulnerabilities, I don't know. Once again, Loki and Teen Loki is the ones you want to get there. Then we have a Sacred MD, a big hater of the channel, with Sylvie and Loki. Okay, he got the Loki, he doesn't have the Kid Loki that you need to apply those regenerations all the time. And finally, we have Mr. Heartgrave, which is the stupidest of all the envoys, that puts the tank in a corner where you cannot benefit out of the counterattacks mechanic of this team. So unfortunately, this is the envoys we have. So which is the best position for the Bifrost team? So once again, it's similar to the Rebirth. You want to keep the tank in the middle, and then you want to put next to the tank the characters that give you the most benefits out of countering attack. So we have Teen Loki for all those regenerations that we need in order to have this mechanic active. Yeah, he's going to apply regeneration to the entire team every time he gets attacked, which is awesome. Then we have Loki, which is going to apply vulnerability to the enemies, and is also going to apply defense downs and bleeds. Every time Loki gets any kind of splash damage, he's applying defense downs, vulnerabilities, bleeds. So you can see the huge advantage that you have of having Loki constantly doing counterattacks. And then Val, once again, it's a decent option to also counterattack instead of Teen Loki, but you have to make sure that Teen Loki also always has regenerations or is always giving regenerations. You can increase this chance by using the specific isolate that you're going to talk about, and Sylvie is really the character that you really don't want to die. Speaking of not dying, of course you also don't want to get Val dead, and you also don't get Val with any kind of turning winds or with slows, right? Because if one of your characters dies and then Val keeps getting slowed and turning wind, well, she's not going to revive. And this is why I prefer to keep Val in the corner, to make sure we always have revive. We always have the vulnerabilities, the defense downs, the bleeds, and so on. We have always this guy smacking with double damage and with the taunt. We always have this guy applying the regenerations to the entire team all the time. And then we also have Sylvie being protected, being far away from all the action. because she is very squishy compared to the other characters. Speaking of squishy, let's talk about the buffs of this team. So you can see that across the board, this team has a lot of health, but you can see right there that Sylvie is indeed the character you have to protect the most because she is the least amount of health. In terms of damage, this team is very high in terms of damage. Of course, if you are applying defense down, it's going to be even better. Then we have the armor. Once again, we want to make sure that Teen Loki and Loki die as often as possible, because whenever they are revived, they give a lot of buffs to us, which is not the case with either Val, and Val cannot be revived even, because she's the one that revives. And then Sylvie, she also does not have a lot of benefits on spawn. In terms of focus, this team is great. I would like still to keep Sylvie as a skirmisher, just to make sure that she lands the negative effects that she does, as they are extremely important. The other characters not as important. The focus of Val is a little bit concerning. At low level, we might consider the skirmisher as a weight. At high level, definitely the striker. So the yellow stars on Val, of course, are going to be extremely important. And overall, the resistance is very good, but it doesn't really matter. The speed of the characters, it's great, but of course Sylvie is going to be a lot faster, because every time that Loki spawns, is giving, or revives, is giving more turn bar to Sylvie, which is going to be quite impactful. So as you can see, the stats are great, the speed is decent, and then we have all these additional mechanics that are going to help with the rest of the team. Okay, so going back to the infographic, now that we know the stats of the characters, once again, we can decide the ISO weight. Once again, if you have your Val very low, you want to use the skirmisher ISO weight. If you have your Val at least for yellow, if not higher, you want to use Val as a striker. Sylvie, as I just mentioned, it's nice to have the skirmisher just to make sure, just to make guaranteed that you're applying the negative effects to the enemies, so the skirmisher is going to be great. With the better build, I decided to go with striker because of the chance of flipping the defense up on the enemies. You can go with raider on better build as well. You don't get any benefit of being a raider. This is why I prefer a striker for consistency, but there is no problem on using raider with this guy. Then we have Teen Loki. You could use him as a healer, but the healer is going to increase your effective healing by 3% on each regen. And if you have him as a striker, you are going to give more regens. So regen gives 10%. That means that you need to apply 4 regens to have more benefits of healer than you have of having striker, right? Because instead of getting 5 regens, you are getting 10. So you need to get 5 regens plus 3 more to get the benefits of the other one, if you understand the math. So in my opinion, Kid Loki is going to be a striker, plus he also has drain mechanics, and whenever you do the isolate attack, you're also going to apply regenerations to the team that are effective throughout the next turn of the characters. And finally, we have Loki. Once again, he's applying defense down, he's applying bleeds, he's going to be next to the tank, so having the skirmisher ISO weight is going to make sure that whenever he counterattacks, he's applying vulnerabilities, defense down, and bleeds to your enemies. Okay, so that's in terms of ISO weight. I think that's the best option. And once again, because we have a skirmisher doing counterattacks, we can afford to have more strikers than we'd use otherwise. In terms of the gear requirements, the gear is quite diverse. Val is going to be the most expensive character. Sylvie, unfortunately, has many characters that require this item, which is it's not great. And then the other characters, it's fine, I guess. You don't have to gear up this team to teal gear. You have to gear up this team to gear tier 15, so you can participate on the upcoming event that will allow you to get isolate blue level 4 and isolate blue level 5. If you are watching this in the future, this is not going to be applying to you, as this event is only for the month where the team is released. Okay, we talked about the position, we talked about the ISO weight. Let's go really quick through the T4s. There's not much to talk about the T4s. The T4 on Val Basic, very important, flips 1 positive effect into heal block on the enemies and attacks multiple targets. So it's a decent T4. Then the special, ability block to multiple characters in raids and dark dimension, so it's a must-have T4. Then we have the ultimate, increase the amount of characters we revive by 2, it does piercing damage, and it also applies trauma in Raids and Dark Dimension, so must have. And finally we have the passive that gives energy on expose, so this is going to be the most important T4 that you do. Then we have the ultimate because of the revives, and then we have the special with ability block, but these two are equally important. Maybe the special is more important because you are going to ability block first, and then you might not have to revive. Okay, so those are the T4s for Val, passive, special, ultimate, and then the basic. All of those are overall extremely important. Then we have Sylvie. The basic from Sylvie is pretty decent, but you're going to use the basic only on turn 3, so keep that in mind. The counter attacks for Sylvie are not important because, once again, you cannot give negative turn meter to the enemies. So it's decent, but it's pretty much skippable for most part. The special is must have because you are applying stun to one target and it's guaranteed from a 50% chance. Then we have the ultimate in Raids and Dark Dimension. You are going to turn rewind the enemies by 75%. This is absolute must have for Raids and Dark Dimension, so if you are not going to use on those game modes, well, what are you doing with this character? And then we have another raid specific for this character. Whenever this character or any Bifrost or Loki mirror ally attacks the enemies, you are going to apply bleed. So yeah, this is a great T4 for raids. Outside of raids, not great. And we don't know exactly where this bleed is coming from, so in order to increase the multiplier of the bleed, we don't know. We might have to do the basic or the passive. This is going to require a lot of testing or hours going through the code of the game, which right now I don't have the time to do. Okay, let's talk about the better ability T4s. If you do the T4 on the basic, it's going to flip defense up on the enemies, and it's going to do more damage if they have defense up or regeneration. The special on better build is must have because you are going to get additional functionality. You are going to get these extra stuns. Then we have the ultimate. You are going to get additional damage in raids. This is a nice to have T4, it's not must have. And then we have the passive, more armor in raids for better rebuild and the entire team. So for better rebuild, in my opinion, you have to do the special first for the stun, then you do the passive, and then the other ones. It's up to you. The ultimate is better than the basic, but overall, it's just damage. Okay, let's talk about Teen Loki. Very excited for this character because I love crocodiles. Basic attack must have because it applies regeneration to all characters, and once again you're going to get more damage and more counter attack chance if you have those regenerations. So this is must have, especially if you have this character as a striker, which you should. Then we have the special. It's just damage, it's irrelevant. You can do it, nice to have, but not super important. It's decent, it's not nice to have, it's just okay. Then we have the ultimate, applies 2 regenerations. This is 2 regenerations, this is not regeneration for 2 turns. So it's another nice to have T4. If you have Striker ISO 8, you can skip the T4 on the ultimate. If you don't have Striker ISO 8, this would be for sure great to have, or nice to have. Then we have the passive, and the passive is must have on Kid Loki because it's the T4 that activates the entire mechanics of the team with the counter attacks and with the extra damage. So in terms of priorities for Kid Loki, we want to do the passive, we want to do the basic, and then you can do whichever, they don't really matter, the special and the ultimate. Finally, we have Loki, OG Loki. Some people call it classic Loki. I don't think that's the case. The classic Loki is the yellow one. I would say original Loki in Marvel Strike Force. But yeah, in terms of T4s, the basic is must have because once again, every time he gets a counter attack, he's applying defense down with bleeds. Higher multiplier on the ability is going to increase the damage of the bleeds, and on top of that, in raids you always get evade. So you are getting attacked and you are not even getting damage. You are going to apply defense down, you are going to apply bleeds, you are going to apply vulnerabilities, and this character is not even dying. Of course, that if you get multiple attacks, the character is going to die anyway, but this is definitely a great T4 for Loki, so basic is definitely great. Okay, special mind controls to characters, it's irrelevant, it's from a 75% chance, so this is not great. Then we have the ultimate. The ultimate is nice to have because you are applying stealth to your characters for 2 turns. and that's going to make sure that the mirror images are getting attacked rather than your team. It's okay, it's not really necessary on this team, it's a nice to have. And then we have the passive. When this character or a hero Asgardian or just Asgardian drops below 50% health, gain 3 evades and 3 death proofs. So this is going to be another must-have T4 on Loki. So in terms of priority, you have to do the passive, then you do the basic, and finally you do the ultimate, and you can skip the basic. Okay, so we went through all the information that you need to know in order to be successful with the BIFROST team. We went through the position of the characters, extremely important. We went through the ISO weight of the characters, extremely important. We went through which characters you should prioritize in terms of gears, which character you can skip in terms of gear. And finally, we went through the T4s that you need for this team in order to shine, and which T4s you can skip. As I mentioned before, we still don't have the information on all the game modes because it's going to require a lot more testing, and we might also ship away some of these T4s in case the team is like so beefy that it's not even going to matter. So any additional T4s that require like extra damage or anything like that, we might skip those as well. But yeah guys, that's the information I have in terms of BIFROST. If you follow this, you're going to be extremely successful in raids. And when it comes down to the other game modes, we'll see in the future. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you smash that like button. And if you found the video helpful, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe for more Strike Force content. And I'll catch you guys later.